Hello, my name is Brooke Tebow, and I'm going to be talking about healthcare disparities in the United States. The American healthcare system is notoriously inequitable, despite the tumultuous costs. The United States spends $2.8 trillion on healthcare annually, way more than any other country. Yet American healthcare is still largely unaffordable and full of inequality. As a result, Americans are suffering and not getting the treatment they need. Mostly the American healthcare system is privatized, with a few government-regulated programs like Medicaid and Medicare. The problem with private insurance programs is that they are unregulated by the government, so they can control their costs and create a monopoly based on supply and demand. The privatized healthcare system is different from a regular market, though, because the primary consumers that influence costs are physicians. Physicians are paid by insurance companies for the services they provide, and because they control the demand of the healthcare market, there's a strong economic incentive to be overly generous in their recommendations and provision of services, and in turn, make a profit for themselves. Add all of this together, and you get a system that is focused on monetary compensation rather than providing adequate care. While every American citizen will likely experience the inequalities of the healthcare system, no group of people has more exposure than low-income Americans. Low-income individuals have historically had lower levels of health insurance coverage than higher-income individuals. Due to the extremely high cost of privatized insurance, many low-income individuals cannot afford the expensive payments and resort to public health insurance options or no insurance at all. Recipients of government-run coverage like Medicaid and Medicare have been steadily increasing for over 2 decades, but a lot of low-income Americans are not eligible for these programs. A study found that an average of 25.9% of low-income persons, compared to just 8.7% of those living at 2 or more times the poverty threshold, were uninsured for a year between 1988 and 2013. The World Health Organization categorizes healthcare as a basic human right, and the United States has fallen short in acknowledging this. This problem is not going to disappear. It is only going to become increasingly worse. Only a few policies have been explicitly enacted to combat disparities in American healthcare. The most profound solution that has been implemented thus far is the Affordable Care Act. The Affordable Care Act was a compromise of President Obama's healthcare proposal and an attempt to solve inaccessible healthcare. The Affordable Care Act promised to offer subsidized private coverage to about 16 million uninsured citizens and to help states extend Medicaid coverage to another 16 million. Even though 20 million gained health care coverage, the Affordable Care Act fell short in tackling the issue of affordability, as not everyone witnessed decreases in payments and some even experienced increases. Although the Affordable Care Act was well-intentioned and had some benefits, much of the issues that it aimed to solve were not alleviated, and disparities continued to persist. Another proposed solution is universal health care. While universal health care has been implemented in several other developed countries with relative success, it is yet to be considered a legitimate system in the United States. This is due to a lack of collective support between different political and socioeconomic parties. In general, most universal healthcare systems aim to lower costs, expand choice, or improve care. The only problem with this model is that universal healthcare fails to address the issue of incentivized healthcare. Keeping the current healthcare system unchanged is another proposed solution. Private insurance companies and Republicans are often the proponents of the current system, which is private and for-profit. Those who support this system are strongly opposed to allowing the government to regulate healthcare, as they believe it is giving the government too much power. Additionally, those who hold these beliefs do not want to be held responsible for someone else's medical needs. However, advocates of a for-profit system have proposed nothing that would effectively provide the whole U.S. population with good medical care at an affordable cost, as a supply and demand market system is not designed to accommodate the needs of an adequate healthcare system. While there may be some benefits to having privatized healthcare, particularly for the wealthy, too many low-income individuals struggle with getting access to adequate care. To combat many of the disparities witnessed in the American healthcare system, an adjusted universal healthcare system should be enacted. This system will provide the option of universal healthcare coverage by the federal government to every citizen, but will allow several private insurance options to those who want them. This works as a compromise between proponents of privatized healthcare and proponents of single-payer healthcare. However, the private insurance options will be strictly regulated by the government to control costs and make the coverage affordable. Finally, the main focus of this adjusted universal healthcare system will be to transform the incentives of healthcare from receiving compensation to improving the quality of care, as all insurance options will be not-for-profit. This means that healthcare providers will not be paid based on how many services they provide. Instead, it will be a fixed payment per patient to prevent physicians from performing unnecessary services, which is commonly referred to as capitation. Overall, this should create a more efficient, affordable, and equitable healthcare system. In order to implement an adjusted universal healthcare system, a detailed plan constructed by healthcare professionals, economists, politicians, and insurers will need to be drafted that outlines budget and infrastructure concerns. This plan will need to be presented to Congress and enacted into legislation by the federal government. Funds will need to be allocated from the federal budget to accommodate the new healthcare system. Private insurers will need to either shut down or transition into an insurance company that obeys the regulations put forth by the government. All employees of insurers who do not choose to continue their practice will become employees for the universal coverage system, and other positions will be available for the rest of the public. This plan will emphasize the importance of keeping as many jobs as possible. Then, healthcare providers will need to re-strategize how care is dispensed and what is motivating that care. This will require transitions in the framework of the healthcare system, where the health and treatment of the patient is a central incentive of the healthcare system, instead of potential profit. Finally, citizens will make the informed choice to participate in either the universal coverage option or the privatized option. This plan will need to be adopted as soon as possible, as it will take several years to become fully implemented. This new system will be accessible to all American citizens and will place a specific focus on ensuring that low-income individuals are covered. Transforming the current healthcare system into one that involves universal healthcare will not be cheap, but long-term returns are expected. Therefore, money will be an essential resource in making sure the transition to the new healthcare system is successful. The funds for this plan will primarily come from a realignment of the federal budget along with an increases in taxes, mostly for the extremely wealthy. However, because this system is extremely similar to other universal healthcare models, it is safe to assume that implementing this system will end up saving the government money in the long run. Estimates range in trillions of dollars over a decade. In addition to money, cooperation will be an essential component when establishing the adjusted universal healthcare system. Economists, politicians, and healthcare professionals will need to work together to find the most fiscally responsible option while putting their differences aside. Democrats and Republicans in Congress will need to work together to pass the necessary legislation and adjust the federal budget to make this healthcare system possible. Overall, cooperation will be necessary to achieve a successful healthcare system. Finally, education is another important resource that will need to be utilized during the transition process. Professionals in healthcare and experts in providing care will need to be available to guide the transition into holistic, patient-based healthcare. Courses focusing on patient-based healthcare may be required for both current healthcare providers and medical students. Universities will need to be involved to make education as widespread as possible. There will also need to be educational resources available to the public so individuals will be well informed when choosing their healthcare plan. If this adjusted form of universal healthcare is successfully implemented, there will be a startling increase in both affordability and quality of care. Everyone would have equal access to healthcare, and individuals will no longer suffer from crippling medical debt, which in turn improves quality of life. The United States will eventually see a reduction in healthcare spending, freeing more resources for other issues. Transitions to patient-based care will result in a reduction of unnecessary services that physicians are currently dispensing. Systemic issues in the current healthcare system will be relieved, creating a more equitable system. Most importantly, the United States will become an example of the idea that healthcare is a human right, and there will no longer be groups who cannot receive care simply because of their monetary status. Here are my references. Thank you.